Good evening, Professor Spooner.
Good afternoon, Frank. Another week with a lot going on and difficult to choose what to talk about. Different parts of the world, but what has taken my attention in particular has been what is being written about the what should I call it? The process of the increasing spread of infectious diseases. I mean, there's two, of course, have been very much in the news in the last, in recent times. One was Ebola in West Africa, and another one was Zika in
Shush.
the world.
Excuse me. Speaking of disease, I'm living with dogs. So, yes.
Well, part of I mean, the disease has become a different sort of problem from what it was, not just 100 years ago, but even 20 or 30 years ago, because there's so much increase in the amount of human movement.
Yes.
And so it's not only the increase in population, which has been unprecedented over the last 150 years, but the increase in the amount of interaction. That's the sort of thing we've been talking about in these sessions regularly, because I think, in my opinion, it's the main engine of globalization, but it's also the main engine of the spread of infectious disease, but also the new types of disease, and the increase in zoonosis, increase in the movement of disease back and forth between humans and other species.
Yes.
Is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. So, of course, I think most people know that HIV is a zoonotic disease, and most of these other new diseases are zoonotic. And that's not really because, I mean, I would imagine fewer, apart from those of us who have cats and dogs, fewer of us have close, intimate relationships with other species of animals now than was the case in the past, because we're all so far removed from the actual production of food, and we don't usually spend our holidays in places where there are lots of wild species that might be a source of infection. However, apparently in Africa, it's a major source of infectious disease in Africa in particular. So that means that on the one hand, there's a problem in the number of doctors per head of population in a number of parts of the world. And we need doctors more and more, and we also need much better organization of health care.
Right, right. You know what I keep thinking of is I keep thinking of the plight of the Native Americans, the American Indians, back when in the 1500s, when the first Europeans arrived, complete with their regular run-of-the-mill diseases, right? Measles, mumps, chickenpox, things like that. That killed the Indians because they had no built-in immunity. Their systems had never been exposed to that before. So that's a pretty basic experiment as to how a very wide population spread out over a fairly large geographic area was done to some extent in many isolated instances by relatively simple diseases. Now, of course, smallpox was equally lethal to both Europeans and to Indians. But I mean, you're quite correct. What's happening now is because of the increase in air travel and the increase in global contact between people to people, you're getting this increased exposure. But I would respectfully submit that as globalization continues to proceed apace, the same thing that that happened to the American Indians, and that is now American Indians are getting the measles, they're getting mumps, they're getting chickenpox, and they're not dying. just like everybody else.
But that's after the pandemic.
Oh, yes, that's after the pandemic. AP, yes,
Um,
yes,
so we may find that, I mean, what happened with the so-called Spanish flu in 1918 and the various varieties of influenza keep on apparently increasing and making it more and more difficult every year to produce a workable, really useful vaccine.
hmm
And this year in particular has been very bad for
yes,
influenza.
yes,
And that's just one disease.
yes.
Um, so we may not have a population of 10 billion after all.
No, it's
It, it,
you're right. And what may be happening, I'm not a biologist, but it could well be that if a biologist was on this call, he or she would shrug and say, well, this is what happens. This is what happens to species. I mean, they expand, they contract a little bit, and then they keep expanding. I mean, there was the Black Death. There have been innumerable wars that have taken gigantic whacks out of the population. I mean, it may be it may be something that's almost predictable in some ways.
well, that's what you just said is particularly interesting because one of the things that I've been reading about the problem of the risk of a pandemic is that there are certain sections of the global population that are particularly at risk. And the fact that they're particularly at risk means that they're particularly dangerous for the rest of us.
True.
And one of them is the poor. So that means that inequality is a health risk for the global population. And the fact that more and more people are, well, longevity, life expectancy keeps increasing, but that means that as more and more people pass the age of 70 or so, it means that there's more and more people with less efficient immune systems
Correct.
who are more at risk of infection. So the healthcare problem under several of the factors of social change that we keep talking about in relation to globalization, the healthcare problem is becoming more and more complex. And we're currently, like all the problems of organization, we're not getting better at taking care of it.
No, we're not equipped to handle it at the moment. You're right. If there was a pandemic akin to the Spanish flu of 1918, which I dare say, I'm going to look this up after I get off the phone. The Spanish flu might have killed more people than were killed in combat in World War One. That's possible.
Yeah.
All right. But if something like that was to hit again on the scale to match the current population, it couldn't be handled by the existing health systems.
Yeah. No, the numbers were amazing in 1918, and they were much more what should I say amazing then than they have been since, because that is in terms of proportion of the larger national populations, they were much larger.
But you're right though. Excuse me for interrupting. I ran a race today in Philadelphia, the Broad Street Run, the 10-mile race. There were 36,000 people in the race, and you're packed in, running down Broad Street. So people are sweating, they're spitting. I mean, you're jostling people, and these are people coming from, I don't know, how many different counties? Do you want to add them up? Maybe 50 different counties. People all converging in Center City, Philadelphia at 6 o'clock in the morning, all right, or up by Temple at Only Station. And it did occur to me, I'm being exposed to an awful lot of germs here. I mean, that did occur to me. And plus
You were there at 6 o'clock in the morning?
I was. Plus, it's the kind of germ exposure, not like in a meeting where if somebody coughs, or this is like people running and sweating and spitting. It's like, I just, and then if you have to use one of those porta potties, I mean, you want to jump into a disinfectant bath after that. So and these events didn't happen 50 years or 100 years ago on this scale. So anything's possible now. It's very.
And you say there were 36,000 people there?
36,000 people ran down Broad Street.
From Temple to where?
Temple to the Philadelphia Navy Yard.
Really?
Every year.
And how many miles is that?
10 miles. It's the largest road race in the United States.
Huh.
Yeah.
And it was safe. The police managed to.
Oh, no, there's more. Yes, it's very well organized and very safe. Yeah, that's not a problem. The problem is that there's too many people there. So.
Well, that's absolutely amazing. I'll have to read about that. There is really an increasing problem of infection because of things like that. There are more and more people coming together.
Yes.
In so many different sorts of situations that we're not prepared for. We don't think of it in advance. We just suddenly find ourselves in these situations, and then it's too late. Once again, we're back to this general problem of organization, but a particularly serious one. And it begins with national organization, but in every case now, of course, it has to do with infection from one country to another.
Oh, absolutely.
And some countries are trying to keep out people with particular health problems, but that doesn't work either.
I'm sure that tonight or tomorrow, any number of people from that race today will be on planes flying to Europe or to Asia. All right, either for business or to go home or on vacations or whatever. And if something ever was to break out, how exactly is that going to work? Is Macron going to get on the phone with President Trump, or all these? Hopefully, all of these cables and communication channels are already in place between the CDC in Atlanta and its equivalent in Britain and in France and in Russia and in Asia. I don't know the answer to that. That would be well worth studying.
Yeah.
Well, now now I'm thoroughly depressed. I'm going to go take yet another shower next.
Well, I hope you'll be well next week.
Oh, I'll be all right. I believe me. I've done this many times before, so it just takes a day to recover. So.
Good. Okay.
All right, Brian. Thank you very much. I look forward to next week.
Yes.
Okay. Take care.
So
What?
Were you on your own this morning, or did Deanne go with you?
No, Deanne's knees don't work that well anymore, so I was on my own.
Did you see anybody else you knew?
No, it's like the size of. I mean, I don't know how many cities have 36,000 people in them, but I mean, it's just too much.
And were most people middle-aged or young, or?
No, I was on the older side for sure. Yeah. It's a whole spectrum. But
and then when you got to City Hall, you could go around either side?
No. They had Broad Street all closed off. Police are everywhere. You have to go around the west side, and then keep going down. But Rendell was not there. Rendell is usually there. He's in front of the hotel atop the Bellevue, but he was not there today. So I don't know where he was.
And so, what time was it when you got to the naval yard?
Um, the race began at 8 a.m. All right, and
Uh-huh.
all the runners have to be in their starting areas at 7. And I'm in the last starting area. So
Uh-huh.
that means I'm in the last group that starts. By the time, listen to this one, by the time I cross the starting line, it's 55 minutes after the first wave has gone. So,
Uh-huh.
so the fellows from Kenya who win the race are already finished at the time I start the race. So I got down to the Navy Yard. I don't know, by about like 11:05 or something. So
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was a long
Uh-huh.
day. It was a long day. At least it didn't
Uh-huh.
rain. It didn't rain, thank God.
No, the
So,
weather was good,
yeah,
and it wasn't too hot either.
no, it was nice. It was nice running weather. So,
Well, that's good. I'm impressed.
well, I could get the medal, but I don't think I'll show it to you. But well, no, I'm not going to get the medal. So I'll send you an
You get a
email.
medal for it?
Oh, I'll send you an email with the medal. It's a big
Uh-huh.
medal. It's a big medal. So. Okay, well, this is unfortunately
Okay.
still on. I didn't hit stop. Let me hit stop right. I'm hitting stop. Okay, it stopped.
Okay.